Welcome back to the Goliath Gauntlet number 2, brought to you by FAB Cards. Charmer, this is quite the matchup. Basically, part of this is quite relevant because as this is going on, I believe the calling in Auckland is wrapping up. And in quite honest, I am so surprised that won the tournament. That's incredible. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I was very surprised that Michael Hamilton showed up as the surprise guest. He was the 30th entrant in the Rumble and then just bodied absolutely everybody. I heard he wasn't going to make the flight, and then his entrance music hit. The crowd pop was enormous, and so congratulations to the Reaper himself. But no, I mean, obviously, I think he said publicly he's not going, but I do think that this is wild that today's matchup could be something that we are seeing in Auckland as well.
Nice to have you on this side of the world there, bud. And then he just absolutely devastates everyone. But yeah, no, you're spot on about it. This could be the final of the calling in Auckland. It is Matt Rogers versus Hayden Dale. That's what we've got going up. Two players who, frankly, have been around the block a few times, Charmer, and they're piloting some heroes, one of which is basically his bread and butter.
Yeah, we've got Matt Rogers on Dash, and when I look at this list, the thing that stands out to me is that this is a veteran Dash player because it's not all in any direction. A lot of times when I play against a Dash player, they're either hard control, like you're never landing a single thing and I'm just going to pistol whip you essentially, or you've got somebody that's just like, hey, we're going to boost until I just don't have a deck and hope that it gets there. But this is a very good, I think, adaptable, flexible way to play Dash. And that tells me that Matt Rogers has thousands of hours on this hero and is comfortable with these ratios, knowing that he can adapt his game plan based on the flow of the game. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how he pilots it.
Well, that's it. And it's a very flexible hero because you don't necessarily know if it's coming or going. Is it playing the long game? Is it going for full aggression here? It can really pivot based on what the matchup is. And against Briar, well, if Briar gets a hot start, that can be problematic. So let's go take a look at that list that Hayden Dale is bringing in on Briar. And like we mentioned, with the Dash, that can play control. It could block out. It could build the pistol, sort of really and just build up that armory of different weapons that she can sort of fire off in multiple ways. Well, the other option here is you just go fast, but nobody really goes faster or taller than Briar at certain junctures. This is a list that has the capacity to just blow you out for 40 if the stars align.
Yeah, obviously the key play here is setting up Channel Mount Heroic and then exploding for insurmountable amounts of damage. Even if you're playing against a control Dash, that's your game plan because you can actually go taller than the tall blocks available if they're running those red unmovables even. But one of the things that I am curious to see is whether or not some of these taller Briar attacks that are often sideboard options make it in this matchup because they could have an impact. I'm talking about cards like Command and Conquer. Obviously, it's always good to destroy the arsenal, but also the denying of the defense reactions is a very relevant line of text on that card, or even Erase Face, because yes, it's probably in here for Dromai matchups. You want it to pop things, but also turning off boost is a pretty big deal if you expect an aggressive Dash. So whether or not those make it in, I think will depend on what Hayden expects Matt to do, essentially. And so there's a bit of a mind game. These are players who know each other, I think, pretty well, and I want to see how they tackle this matchup.
Things that we can definitely suspect will be in the list 2 times. Smashing Good Time. It's Dash. There's items. Smashing Good Time is certainly going to be an option for Briar. And a particular card that is very unique in the sense that we don't really see it much is Explosive Growth. It's a red attack. Earth Fusion. It does potentially improve the remainder of the combat chain, which can get ugly, but it also does 1 arcane damage with no fusion. So it's, again, splitting up the damage in 2 ways, making it uncomfortable, as well as Tome of the Arknight. Hey, nobody out there likes to gamble and roll the dice on very specific hand recipes like Briar. You need a certain amount of non-attacks and a certain amount of attacks to really blow your opponent out. And Tome of the Arknight is much like Sonata Arcanix. You're flipping cards off the top and you're crossing your fingers. But like you said, Channel Mount Heroic is the nucleus of this deck. It is that nuclear reactor that powers what this can do. I'm very fascinated to see the approach Matt Rogers takes to this matchup, Charmer. Let's jump into it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how this plays out. And as we're jumping into this match, you mentioned the tomes. One of the things that I kind of wanted to highlight as well is the other tomes and the other cards like Sonata that can maybe help you when these hands brick as Briar, right? So one of the things we talk about is that Briar is explosive, but every now and then you get those weird hands where you draw like 4 non-attack actions. So Tome of the Arknight can help with that. Yes, it's a blue, but maybe get you out of a pickle. Same thing with Tome of Harvests even. Yes, it's likely just this blue earth pitch, but the reality is in a pickle, if you've got those really bad hands, you might be able to send them away, pick up some attacks, and keep going. So, again, as we're diving into this matchup, that's something that I want to keep an eye out for, is whether or not things are bricking for Hayden, because that would be disastrous.
The Goliath Gauntlet is brought to you by FAB Cards, where reality and fantasy meet. Go to kfabecards.com for all your Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and Flesh and Blood needs. FAB Cards. Be who you want to be.
Matt Rogers versus Hayden Dale as we line up for the Goliath Gauntlet. A ticket to the next round is up for grabs here. 2 players who are legends in their own right. Hayden Dale, you know him for Rhinar, perhaps some wizardry as well. Matt Rogers is in the comfort zone right now. So it's going to be Induction Chamber. It's not going to be Teklo Pounder or anything along those lines. It is going to be pistols, go boom a few times. You've got some help in terms of blocking ability, the Teklo Foundry Heart. You've got, as well as the Crown of Providence. But on the other side there, you've got some blocking options as well for Hayden Dale.
Yeah, given that this is a bit more of a mid-rangey build, and I'm really not a big fan of that terminology in Flesh and Blood, because I don't think that the traditional terms apply. I like to think of proactive, reactive, and then dynamic decks that can kind of change their game plan. This is more of a dynamic list. I think that the Chamber makes the most sense because it is the one that creates the most awkward board states for your opponent, right? Attacking twice for 2 is better than buffing your single attack, so you don't want to start with Purifier. They're great when you get them, but not the way you want to begin the game. And then, as you said, no Pounder. I believe Matt only runs 1 in the list, and so that's, I think, for the blue pitch and maybe a bit of a point of extra gas if the game needs it, but not an emphasis.
Peeling one of those equipment pieces is T-Bone. Now, Matt Rogers went ahead and loaded the pistol, loaded the induction chamber. The go again after this is a red T-Bone, bringing in the Grasp of the Arknight as well as a Lightning Surge. Now, T-Bone is basically forcing your opponent to give up some equipment, which early game, that could be important because Briar likes to save that equipment typically for on-hit effects or when you need to stay alive to kill your opponent.
And it's also really important in this matchup because there are no pieces that you can casually throw out there. So in some matchups, you might have something like Snapdragons, for example, and it has no defensive value, but it also doesn't get destroyed or have any negative effects when it blocks. So sometimes T-Bone just eats those, but all of the equipment there are ones with block values. And when you're looking at Creepers and Tunic and even Crown, they're going to be gone the moment you use them. So you're going to eat that Grasp. And that's actually a good turn 0 start for Matt Rogers, just to start chipping away at the armor. And then here we're having, again, one of those big attacks right out of the gate.
Hayden Dale having trouble with the phone. He accidentally perhaps ordered some Uber Eats, but it's all good because that one rune chat that was created off of the Grasp of the Arknight does go through. An aura was made, which means that the Swarming Gloombale gets go again as a result, but it is hyped up a little bit off the back of a Nimblism. So 6 go again, and Matt Rogers is offering up the helmet pretty early, the Crown of Providence, and opting to just keep the arsenal intact and maybe just cycle a card through. But Rosetta Thorn, we've seen this recipe before. One of arguably the greatest weapon to come out of Flesh and Blood, Rosetta Thorn.
Yeah, I was just about to mention the fact that Thorn was online, and so the Crown might have been either trying to make this hand better, or maybe you were trying to find some extra pitch to prevent some of the arcane damage, or maybe you have a bunch of items and you actually didn't have anything that blocked at all. It's kind of hard to tell, but it was a very early Crown. Now, here we're starting things off. Matt Rogers is beginning with High Octane. So this is the card where every time you boost, you also gain an action point and it replaces itself with the draw card. because of the blue pitch, it often means that you're kind of ramping resources. You're giving yourselves opportunities to not only play these boosted attacks, which will have go again, but then because of the extra action points, you can add more items to the field as well. Perhaps knowing he was playing high octane, he was searching for something like a purifier or maybe another chamber to make use of these action points. I could have seen that be a reason for the dig with the crown as well.
High Octane is one of those cards that, you'll have the go against off the boost, but then you could do some other funky stuff for sure. You could perhaps play an item and then have an additional action point and interact with that. And Matt Rogers down to 31. Basically, all the mystery of what type of matchup Matt Rogers is going to play is kind of, thrown to the wind now, given the fact that he took a licking and is going to start throwing haymakers right back with his zipper hit here. Now, there was a boost. It was successful. So there's a second action point for Matt Rogers indicated by that dash.
Yep, this is the zipper hit coming in. I can't tell at the moment if that is a blue or not. It looks like it might be a blue to me. There's no dice indicating the value, but as you said, does have the additional action point as a result. And Hayden here, I was going to say, Hayden, I think is going to take it. I think right now, if you've got a 4-card hand in an arsenal and there's no on hits being threatened as Briar, you probably just assume you can do more damage on your turn. So we'll see how this plays out.
Worth noting as well, Hayden Dale's rolling like 14 blue earth cards. And that always was one of the, the banes of, earlier Briar Mountain builds where you didn't want to put too much blue in your deck because you wanted the sheer gasoline that comes out of those red attacks. But Hayden Dale saying, nah, man, we're good. I want to make sure that when I do draw that card, I have an ability to, I have the ability to actually play it. And we're not done yet. There's T-Bone. So T-Bone again, I believe this is another blue one. It's going to go ahead and just, again, Scorpion style, Mortal Kombat, get over here, yoink that glove. And that's followed up as well by a magnetic shockwave.
Yeah, the magnetic shockwave is another thing that can essentially yoink equipment because if you're not familiar, this is one of those Crucible Majestics that says the defending hero has to defend it with X equipment where they control, where X is the number of times you have boosted. And because the grasp was already pulled by the T-Bone, it is on the chain. You can't then slide that over. So this is going to, at a minimum, eat the crown, maybe even the creepers here as well. It does look like that's going to be the case. And that's, again, a really big deal when you're trying to get through some of the defensive options that Briar has that they like to lean on if they are saving their hand.
Well, that's part of it, right? It's just like, hey, okay, well, I guess you get my equipment here. It's there to be used, but typically these types of cards are meant to sort of shore up on hits and sort of close out those breakpoints for particular attacks when you have to give them up this early and everything is blade break or otherwise, it has an effect. You're putting some battle-worn tokens on him in one way or another. Matt Rogers finding the T-Bones, finding the magnetic shockwaves early has meant that Hayden Dale doesn't have that equipment set to rely on late game. As you can see, it's all been shredded to pieces. There's just that lowly tunic now, and that potentially can get gooned again by something like another T-Bone into another T-Bone.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, you can pull the grasp with the first, and then the second one has to be eaten by the tunic. And here we saw the heart get activated by Matt because he had the additional action point there after the pistol firings and so forth. And so also got some resources. We're going to see, I think, this get go again with the chamber, continue to kind of plink away. And this was a really big turn for Matt Rogers, pushing through damage, eating the equipment. The thing that stands out to me, though, is that Hayden still hasn't used anything from his hand card-wise. So, yeah, damage went through, your equipment's gone, but this is a Briar with a 5-card hand who's been patiently waiting. Let's see what kind of explosive pop-off he can come back with.
Well, Matt Rogers was able to go ahead and actually put some pressure, and even though Hayden Dale has been very covetous of that hand, Matt Rogers didn't do a whole lot of work. Typically, if you're holding onto a hand and you've got that free runway to go ahead and send it, Matt Rogers should have, would have liked to have put more into Hayden Dale than he did, because Hayden Dale now is only trailing by a single point and has a 5-card hand. he might have something like, well, I've got Mountain, I've got another non-attack, I've got an attack, I can send Rosetta, I can pocket a card, and then I can come at you the turn after that. I've got so much, Hayden has so much cushion here at 30. So we'll see how this resolves, but it's going to be a Sonata flipping 3 cards here.
Yeah, we'll see how the Sonata falls. One of the other things that stands out to me about that is Matt Rogers would have loved to have ended that with a maximum velocity, right? Something where you're pushing a lot more damage at the end of that big turn would have been significantly more beneficial. Here, Hayden does hit. So we have the Gloomveil, the Scar for Scar, and the Nimbleism. I think he's pointing here to the Gloomveil as his selection. We're going to shuffle up the others, banish that Sonata, but this means the arcane damage is going through. You essentially replace the card, so that 5-card hand's still active, but now Thorn is for sure turned on for the turn, and we have all the other gas waiting to unfold.
What's fascinating here is that if there was a 2-point differential, if Hayden was at, let's say, 29 instead of 30, he probably would have taken the Scar for a Scar, because it's a guaranteed 4 go again. Matt Rogers here, taking the 1 arcane, going down to 30. Hayden Dale is like, well, now my Scar doesn't have go again anymore, so I have to take the Swarming Gloomveil. But the Swarming Gloomveil with the creation of an aura is only 3 go again. So Matt Rogers here, it's one of those things where the order of how things resolve is quite important, because if Hayden Dale had to select the card prior, which he does, then this is the result. He has to take the safer pick, which is the Swarming Gloomveil, which is a very good card. Let's not get crazy here. But if Matt Rogers had to take or not take first, or sorry, if Hayden had to pick first and he picks Scar for a Scar, Matt Rogers is just like, all right, I'll take the damage, and shuts that off right away. This is followed up though with a Force of Nature. The embodiment of lightning is created, and there it is, man. There's the centerpiece.
Wow. Okay, so this Swarming Gloomveil aura was created in the form of Channel Mount Heroic, not the Rune Chant. So this is going to be a big one with Go Again, but also the Force of Nature is live and active. This is exactly why Hayden was sitting on this hand. This is kind of the dream. And what's even worse is that Channel is going to stick around for another turn, because we see the Earth Lore in the pitch. So you're going to get big swing here. This is 8 coming from the Swarming at the moment because of the Force of Nature, the Channel buffs, etc. But also we still have 1 card left in hand. Thorn is active if we do want to activate that. But even if you arsenal this, because you're keeping Channel Mount Heroic and you're going to have your Tunic live next turn, it's at 2 counters now, so that'll be at 3. You're going to likely have another big turn next turn. So this is really, really juicy for Hayden Dale.
All right, what's he holding? He might have a Lightning Press to just push this over the top. Again, if this hits, he does draw a card. There is a Go Again coming up after this as well. Yeah, all right, we're just going to go for the Scar for a Scar. Now, there is no Go Again on this. However, the on-hit still resolves because of the Force of Nature, meaning that because it was fused, because any attack that has a attack value that's greater than the base, if that connects, you draw a card, which is what he's doing right here. So 7 gets to connect. Matt Rogers down to 23. A card has been drawn, and that's it. He's doing the channel check and just basically saying, all right, clean up the turn. The card he drew is going to go to Arsenal, and now it's going to be Hayden Dale's game to basically lose, because if he draws 4 duds, Matt Rogers is going to feel great. But if his hand is fire like the previous one, this could be over in a heartbeat.
Absolutely. And the biggest issue to me right now for Matt Rogers is whether or not you either have a very high pressure hand, again, something where you can pop back and maybe end with that maximum velocity that you didn't have the last time, or whether or not you have any relevant on hits. But the problem is Dash doesn't have them in that regard, right? This isn't a list that is running pummels so that you can't strip cards in that way. I don't see Command and Conquer, so you can't get rid of the Arsenal card. You really are just relying on damage being threatening enough to scare Hayden into blocking. So I don't know how Matt navigates this. I would be a bit terrified if I was him.
Anytime you're staring down a Channel Mount Heroic with 5-card hand and nothing really to send at your opponent, it's not like Matt Rogers is saying, all right, well, I'm sending something scary at you. Like in the Guardian matchup, this is where you're like, okay, well, if I've got a Spinal Crush or something, maybe I'm getting cards out of my opponent, but that's not what the situation is here. That is not the case at all, as Hayden Dale is going to have is going to take it with a smile here and say, all right, cool, no problem. The question here, Charmer, is what does this hand look like? Did he find, 2 and 2? Did he find perhaps a non-attack and some go-agains attached to it? And he didn't give up anything to block here. So that must mean that his hand is very relevant.
Well, to be fair, he still has the health lead and there was no relevant on-hits offered. So there's no reason to block. As you said, the real key is whether or not he bricked, but that's where I would mention the extra tomes that he's running, right? So even if he has a bad hand, cards like Tome of the Arknight, cards like Tome of Harvest, etc., would be active to potentially bail him out. That's what I really love about his list in particular, is that it does a good job of preventing the bricks. Sonata, again, is another one that can dig. So right now, at a minimum, we've got the Bramble Spark that went, and that triggered, it's active. Then we pitched into the Sonata so that we got one extra card. That tells me he really wanted to make sure he had at least one attack, but he does land it, and he's selecting Snatch, which is, again, wonderful, because if you end your turn with that, you can give yourself another arsenal. Tunic is still live. We got to factor that in. The other thing that really jumps out at me as well is we've got one Earth card in the pitch already. Depending on what he does for the rest of the turn here, he could keep this Channel Mount Heroic for another turn. You already said it. There's a lot of Earth pitch cards in this list.
Yeah, and there's an outlet to get rid of it too. I mean, you can just pitch a blue right now, blue Earth, create a rune chant, and then send a Snatch with Go Again. That is ultra tall. That Snatch with Go Again is a 10-point snatch that draws you a card and sends another arcane at your opponent. So Matt Rogers took the arcane from Sonata Arcanix. There's going to be an arcane coming from Bramble Spark as well. It was fused, so that is +3 off of the Channel Mount Heroic, +3 off Bramble Spark. The question is, what other card is in his hand and what is in the arsenal? It looks like Hayden Dale is just kind of figuring things out here. He knows that he's got things lined up very well. The ducks are in a row, but what do you send Howard first or do you send Donald first?
Oh man, which duck, huh? Looks like going to be the Enlightened Strike going, and
he went
embodiment
plus
there. Yeah, I was gonna say he went with the bonus because the embodiment was live, right? Because of the Bramble Spark into Sonata. So this is huge. This isn't just Enlightened Strike. This is like Smite from the gods.
Oh, and it's not done yet because there's a Snatch, I think, that comes up right after this. The question is that, I mean, you send the Snatch all day long. There's no other way to necessarily get Go Again. I think what he's hoping for, if he had something in the arsenal, like if there was a Swarming Gloomveil at arsenal, this turn would have been absolutely heroic. It would have been insane. But I think what Hayden Dale's saying now is, do I send the Snatch for 7, or do I save it? Do I Rosetta here with my opponents down so low? That's a good question. I mean, in my opinion, you're always sending the tallest attack when your opponent is up against it right here.
Oh, we're making the rune chant. And then we are sending Thorn.
Well,
we're not going to, at least at the moment, we're not going to keep the Channel Mount Heroic. So I wonder if that's what's in the arsenal, is just a second Channel Mount Heroic. You said that if there was a swarming there, then it would have been a heroic turn. It's already heroic. It's all Mount Heroic. But if that's a second one under there, this game could be over very, very quickly.
Well, at the moment right now, it's 2, 2, and 1. A nice little diced up and cut up. You think that it's digestible when it's this small, but man, oh man, that's a lot of stuff that you got to digest, as the arcane just gets a free ride right into the life total. Matt Rogers at 7, Hayden Dale comfortably at 26. Is that Rosetta Thorn 2 physical still on the stack? Matt Rogers here has taken it from the get-go, and there's been really, Matt Rogers has kind of just stared it down and taken it off the chin, because I think that at a certain point, he has to start sending it back. Has to start making it uncomfortable to Hayden. If you're on the back foot, Charmer, you're never coming back from this point, barring some disastrous hands from Hayden Dale, but Matt Rogers also knows that there's a snatch in his hand. So no matter what happens, there's going to be some danger that Matt Rogers is going to have to address.
Yeah, the one way that Matt Rogers has to get back into this game is to, as you said, kind of take this, soak it. Yes, it's scary, but if you can have a similar turn of your own, right? If you can go 3 or 4 boosts and again, end with the big maximum velocity attack, or get some of your other items set up so that you can be more efficient with blocking while sending, 2 or 3 pistol attacks, whatever the case may be, you have to crack back big here. And so right out of the gate, it looks like we're going to be starting with a zipper hit. I believe this is one of the either red or yellow ones. It doesn't look like that's a blue pitch there. So we're hoping, just so that things stay interesting, that Matt can come back with a very aggressive turn and force Hayden Dale into a situation where he has to start considering blocking. Or the other way that Matt gets back into the game is you send a big turn here and then Hayden bricks, right? He gets either all non-attack actions, he can't send the offense, or even if he has an okay turn, you can sometimes sneak in a win because of either 2 blocks or no blocks. That's something that I don't think gets mentioned enough with Briar. And when I'm looking at his list in particular, we've got cards like Gorganian Tome. He's running 3 Amulets of Earth. There is a scenario where Hayden could end up with a hand that just has like 1 card that blocks.
That was a red zipper hit connecting for 5. The go again is off the boost, and that looks like a Pulse Wave Harpoon that is going to follow this one up. And Pulse Wave Harpoon has quite the text. Basically, when it attacks the hero, they're going to reveal X amount of cards, where X was the number of times that has been boosted. So 2 cards. And then what happens is Matt Rogers is going to choose an action card with defense less than or equal to X.
And hey, speaking of the no blocks, so 2 cards revealed, and this is essentially Hayden saying, you're gonna pick this one because the amulet doesn't have a block value.
So no block value, is that less than 2? I guess I don't think that counts. Like, there are cards out there that have block value 0, which is interesting to me. I think Ball Lightning had block value 0.
Yes.
So that's actually quite an interesting differential or difference between the two, of block value 0 and no block value at all. Because I think Pulse Wave Harpoon can't target something like an amulet.
Well, now we have the amulet there on the stack, but I think it was because he was just showing again for the reveal on the second one. So they're cleaning that up. But you're absolutely right. I don't think that you can actually select that as an option with the Pulse Wave, but this is huge for Matt because it pulled cards out of Hayden's hand when he wanted to press the gas. And we thought, hey, Matt might have to do that just through sheer damage, but instead he rolls up with double Pulse Wave, gets rid of some cards, and now we know Hayden is sitting on at least 1 amulet as well. This is going to be a rather lackluster turn for Hayden, which will buy Matt time to get back into this. He also leaked some damage to kind of close the gap. We're going to see the Achilles get popped so that we can get an action point and continue to press some more damage as well, loading up the pistol.
Well, might as well. I guess at this point, let's just leak through. Hayden is just probably going to take it both times, as you can see here. All right, give it go again. We're going to load both up again and fire for another 2 while the going is good in this case. But again, Hayden Dale is likely just going to drop down to 14 here. I don't see why he would ever give up any other cards. But that Achilles Accelerator, I think, is the last bit of Arcane Barrier, if I'm not mistaken. It had a Arcane Barrier 1, but it's now gone. So Hayden Dale now can potentially just be like, all right, well, create a rune chant and swing, and that's one that gets through. So that's always a possibility.
That's one that always gets through, and then every time Thorn triggers, that's a guaranteed 2 as well. And that's very dangerous for Matt because he's only at 6. So 2 turns of, a rune chant plus a Thorn would be enough to end it. And speaking of arcane damage, here comes a Sonata as well.
Oh, that's the Sonata I know. Absolutely.
Yeah, this has the potential to be brutal, but instead we get the whiff for Hayden, and Matt is catching the breaks. I do want to highlight something else that happened there. Because Matt got to see Hayden's full hand, he knew that he had an amulet. He knew that his hand wasn't going to be that great. I liked that Matt kind of sacrificed the Achilles anyway to close the health gap even further, knowing this is a window of opportunity where I don't have a lot to fear now. Like, again, yes, Arcane Barrier, that's potentially an issue long term. We're going to see at least one Arcane get through here. But Matt recognized there's no way he gets back into this game if he doesn't push damage. He also, by setting up this Teklo core, put himself in a position where when it's not arcane damage, he can sacrifice cards to block if needed, knowing he's going to get free resources from that. So this was just, I think, a very mentally aware play by Matt to make this at least potentially winnable. Like, it was looking dire. And while it still doesn't look great for Matt, it's far closer now than it was prior to that previous turn.
14-4 in favor of Hayden Dale. Matt Rogers of Team Dragon Shield just kind of hanging on. The Teklo core is going to go ahead and deposit 2 pieces of delicious, robust, grain-fed, free-range resources. But does he have the card to match with them? He's going through his graveyard a bit. It might be Hayden Dale who's saying, hey, what's in there? Give me a little peek into the vault there, bucko. But as it stands now, Hayden Dale does have, like you said, got some runway. The cushion is not as big as it was. I mean, it wasn't too long ago that Hayden Dale was at 29, and these boost dashes, if they get going, they get going. That is throttle, though, and that is a throttle coming in for 6 with the boost. The boost is likely going to be successful. It is 6 go again.
And this is a really big deal because not only is it 6 go again, but again, because of the core, you didn't have to sacrifice any other cards in your hand. So Matt still sitting with what should be a grip of 3 over there to continue to pressure after this. And this is not only going to get a block, but it's going to eat a Channel Mount Heroic.
Well, if the Channel Mount Heroic's being given up, it's because it probably wasn't doing a whole lot, frankly. I mean, let's be real. It's probably, there's probably no Earth card to support it. It's just fodder. So at that point, when you're this close to the edge, you throw it away as a 3 block. You don't play for late game. If this was like maybe the early turns, you'd hold on to it, maybe drop it in Arsenal and wait for an opportunity to play it. But you're so close to the edge now that you got to throw it out there. You're never going to see that card have any effect ultimately. If you're pitching a card, if you're playing using 2 cards out of your hand to establish Channel Mount Heroic, sure, Matt's at 4. But in the meantime, Matt might be able to just go ahead and bring you close enough to the edge that you have to actually fight back. And what Hayden Dale's thinking here is, what is the most efficient way for me to send arcane damage? That's basically it.
Well, he's going to have to figure out how he can do so while also dealing with another throttle here. So Matt Rogers in between kind of had the dream. He pitched one of his non-mechanologist cards to activate the heart and then rolled 2 mechanologist cards. So he ended up pitching for 3 resources that allowed him to set this up as well, and Hayden's taking it. So we are getting to the point now where Matt is potentially going to threaten lethal, which will force cards out of Hayden Dale's hand. This here is the 0 to 60, and I believe we're going to see a block now.
Well, it's coming in for 4, and there's no craziness attached to it. There's no combat tricks, as it were, that can put this over the top, from what I understand. In which case, Hayden could potentially, just swallow this, as it looks like that's exactly what he's doing. So why not? And the follow-up is a pistol, and the pistol's going to be blocked there by a lightning surge again, just nicely meeting the 2 with a 2 block. So Hayden Dale down to 1, not playing any games here, holding on to at least some of the cards in his hand. I think there's 2 left, and it's going to be a Gorg Tome drawing you for free. It's also worth half a go again, as it were. The question is are you finding another piece to make this happen? Hayden Dale taking pause here. Maybe he didn't like what he saw.
Yeah. You have to wonder, does he have an attack with go again? We saw him send the lightning surge away, so I assume that he's doing so knowing that he's got other attacks in his hand. Real thing you're looking for here is something that had go again. And with the snatch, it looks like that's not the case. You either wanted another non-attack so that you could get the embodiment like you were mentioning, or an attack that naturally had go again so that you could get to a position where you're activating Thorn. Now, the one thing that stands out to me here, though, is there's still a card in hand and one in arsenal. And so I don't know if maybe these are combat tricks, something like a lightning press to try to go over the top. And that's why you're keeping them. And the reason I mention it is because knowing that there's no arcane barrier, you would think if this was going to truly be the end of Hayden Dale's turn, he would have created a rune chant. So with him holding that card there, it's either another red that he couldn't pitch, or he's got some sort of combat trick like a lightning press.
Well, the press is what you're playing around over here. There's no other way to give that. There's no way to give that snatch go again. So that's not going to happen. You don't have the spellbound creepers to do a little hocus pocus and just sort of wedge a go again in there. You know, with some creative accounting, as it were. Right now, the snatch for 4, Matt Rogers can probably cover that up, no problem. But you've got to cover up the whole enchilada here, because if you let one leak and Hayden Dale is holding on to the press, that's lights out. Matt Rogers is out of the tournament. Well, but in this case,
what are the chances, Flake? What are the chances that both the arsenal and the card in hand are the 2 lightning presses in Hayden's list?
Look, I like Matt Rogers. I love him. He's a really nice guy. I sent him a housewarming gift. It was a picture of me saying I love you, that it's a fridge magnet. And he showed me a picture. It's on his fridge. That said, for the sake of entertainment, for good TV, let's do it, Hayden Dale. Show me double lightning press.
Yeah, that would be like when you line up the triple German suplex or the victory. But instead, it looks like it's just an overblock. Matt respecting at least one potential press. I like that. And knowing you're still going to get 2 resources here from that Teklo, like I said, it opened up the opportunity for you to be a little bit more efficient with your blocking for the turns that the core was available, because it's like getting a free yellow pitch.
All right.
The question now is, can Hayden survive and continue to threaten damage?
All right. Everybody in chat who's watching this right now who said, oh, this is over, Hayden's got this. Where are you at now? Stand up, you cowards, because this game is up for grabs as Matt Rogers fought back from what looked like an insurmountable lead. Hayden Dale was at 29 life just not a moment ago. Blink of an eye, he's down to 1, holding on for dear life. All of Matt Rogers' on hits now are victory, and that is amazing, as Hayden Dale is just sort of, you know, holding on to some cards here. Matt Rogers, I believe the turns to him, if I'm not mistaken. As you can see, yes. There's two floating resources. The Teklo core is now gone. So 2 free resources for Matt Rogers, and he can do a lot of stuff with 2 resources.
Absolutely. And there should be 2 cards still in hand because we saw the 2 used to block. The question is, do you start with the pistols to force some of these blocks out before you come with something big? And it does look like that is part of the game plan. And so now we have the T-Bone.
Thelonious Bone coming through. There it is. That's riding the Harley all the way to that Grasp of the Arknight. It wants those gloves. It's also going to get met by that card that we're talking about, which was Explosive Growth. The other part about Explosive Growth, which is great, is it's one of those rare 3 blocks in the set. From Tales of Aria, because a lot of the other Tales of Aria attack actions, like Entwined Lightning, Lightning Surge, for example, a lot of the attack actions in this set block for 2. So there's a 3 block from Hayden Dale matching that T-Bone just pound for pound.
Yeah, it is actually really interesting because Hayden is running a fair number of the rare 3 blocks from Aria, because you also have the Force of Nature, the Blue Autumn's touches, but you are correct. Explosive Growth is one of those ones that I think sneaks up on people. And here we are going to eat the Tunic to stay alive, block the other pistol shot here. Now, Hayden, I believe, just has the Arsenal. So if it's an attack, he might throw it just to see if he can eat some cards, but it looks like he's just going to pass and draw up. He is in the position where he needs Matt Rogers to have an off turn. Unfortunately, Hayden, you live by the Briar, but you also die by the Briar. So we had that explosive exchange with Channel Mount Heroic, and then afterwards, some kind of clunky hands. Again, you had the amulet, you had the double, Pulse Wave Harpoon turn by Matt Rogers. So that made you kind of falter a bit, and you've been unable to get the gas going since. And you're stuck blocking. And I can't help but wonder, as I said before, whether or not we're going to run into a situation where some of these low blocks or no blocks get in the way for Hayden, because We know he's running the amulets. We've already seen the tome get played, so you don't have to worry about drawing that. But all he needs is really one amulet to get in the way, and Matt has a huge opportunity.
Erase Face was a nice inclusion into the list for Hayden Dale, especially against a mechanologist boost list that's looking to boost mechanologist cards. They'd have all lost it, so there was been no. It would have effectively acted almost like a Spinal Crush to that degree of stopping the go against from the attack actions. In this case, pistol for 2. Pistol for lethal over and over and over again. Matt Rogers knows what he's doing. We're in a quasi Kodachi lock, as it were, but it's pistol lock. In this case, as Hayden Dale has no room to maneuver, frankly. He just can't. And for some reason, Hayden Dale's Grasp of the Arknight has 3 counters on it. Why not?
Yeah, Speedy Award-winning cosplayer Carolina likes to call this the Glock lock, but I prefer to call it getting pistol whipped. And regardless of what its name is, it doesn't feel good when you're on the receiving end, because every time you see them pitch a blue, you know that you're going to have to deal with multiple attacks from the pistol. And so that means 1 card to 2 for you defending. And it's only going to get worse the longer it goes, because Matt will eventually find potentially another chamber or ways to boost the pistol attack, which then means your card economy has to be more forgiving in terms of like the block values, and Briar can struggle with that. So Hayden is just kind of praying for any sort of window of opportunity to get back on the offensive side.
We were discussing earlier, what item do you bring in? And Matt Rogers super happy that he started the game with the induction charmer, which is amazing, as he just goes ahead and pistol for 2, induction charmer activated, go again on the pistol. And this is just feeding cards, or just feeding on those cards in Hayden Dale's hand. I don't think there's ever going to be an opportunity where Hayden Dale could recover from this. Matt Rogers is showing you why he is the absolute best dash player in the world. Has been, is now, will likely always be. Yeah, the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. He is the Bret Hart of New Zealand.
Sure, I guess I'll give you that. Why not?
Oh, all right. No dice.
Yeah, there's no way to stop this. This is going to be a victory for Matt. I think they're just kind of like talking through the end there, but yeah, this was a great game. Fantastic way for Matt Rogers to pull this out. As I said, I would have been very scared at a couple of points, but he knew exactly how to navigate it. Like I said, he's got thousands of hours, and I remember saying, hey, he knows the way he gets back into this, and sometimes that means taking it on the chin so that you can come back. He very properly realized, okay, these pulse waves are going to do far more for me pulling cards out of his hand than they are just straight up 3 blocking. So kudos to him. Very well done. And he's going to be moving on.
He is going to be moving on. And for all of those Briar players out there who can definitely sympathize, I know I was one for a while. Briar is Tan and Grace's favorite hero as well. You know how it goes, where you feel seemingly invincible. You just dunked on your opponent for 20 damage, and then you draw absolute rags. There's nothing you can do about it, unfortunately. And in this case, Hayden Dale kind of was the victim of an amulet, a couple non-attack actions, and then came the T-Bone, the Pulse Wave Harpoons, and that just kind of peeled those important cards out of your hand. It was really nasty, but ultimately you can't feel bad when you lose to a player of Matt Rogers' ilk on the hero that made him famous.
Yeah, if I could pick a single play or a single moment that like really changed the course of the game, though, and as I said before, you live by the Briar, you die by the Briar. It's really when that Sonata whiffed. There were a lot of other things that absolutely mattered, but when Hayden needed to come back with even just a little bit of gasp, right? So he wasn't 100% pistol locked. He played the Sonata, he whiffed, so he was down a card, and then it was really difficult for him to recover after that moment. So again, it's sometimes that you draw 4 non-attack actions, but again with Briar, it's also sometimes that you whiff on your Sonatas. And the big blowouts, they're always memorable, but those losses are tough too.
No, they're definitely difficult. And Hayden Dale, thank you so much for joining us in the tournament. A very sturdy individual, one of my favorite people out of Australia. Sorry, Uber. It's just he was there first, and that's how it goes. All right, friends, thank you so much again for joining us for the Goliath Gauntlet. We'll have so many more matches coming down as we whittle our field down to the semifinalists and ultimately the finals. We're going to crown another champion in a few weeks. We're very excited for that. And Charmer, anyone left that you feel is just, I don't want to say a lock. I had Brody Spurlock winning the whole 9 yards here, and unfortunately Brody is no longer in the tournament, but there's still some very important names that are left.
Yeah, I said at the start of this tournament that I felt like even though he won it the last time, people were going to sleep on Majin. I felt like they thought maybe it was a beginner's luck, a bit of a fluke for those of the people who don't know his other card game experiences like I do, because I come from the Legends of Runeterra community as well. He's just a naturally talented card game player. All the good things we say about Brody really apply to Majin too. I've never seen him pick up a card game and not do well. And if I'm being honest, he has never lost a Goliath Gauntlet yet. So as long as he's still in the event, I'm just going to keep betting on him.
You're the guy who, and I have friends like this where it's the first game of the season. Okay, somebody hits 2 home runs in game 1, and then they tweet out something like, he's on pace for the 300 and something, 316 home runs this season or whatever it is, like, something ridiculous. Like, it's like, get bent, like, stop it with it. I
live in Michigan, and so if you have grown up any sort of like Detroit sports fan, you take whatever win you can get. Every tiny accomplishment is like the best thing. So when you win game 1 of the season, you absolutely are tweeting, hey, we're undefeated.
Go.
You love it. The day after the Super Bowl, you're like, hey, we don't have any losses this year. Well, nobody's played a game, but it doesn't matter. We don't have any losses. You take the silver linings.
Yeah. And before this becomes a hockey podcast where I teach you about the ultimate longevity and success of the Red Wings, we will just say thank you so much to our sponsors at KFAB Cards. Go to kfabecards.com. Singles, sealed product, go support them. KFAB Cards is awesome. And again, big thanks to LSS. We know LSS loves this stuff as they've been supportive of this whole tournament altogether. There's going to be a gold foiled Goliath Gauntlet graded by PCG that's going to go to our winner. And again, that is courtesy of LSS. So big thanks to Charmer. Thanks again for joining us, man.
Well, thanks for having me. I will come back anytime you need me.
All right, that's never happening again. But thank you for watching. We'll catch you next time on Goliath Gauntlet number 2.